All right, chat. So let me tell you guys a story. When you eat, if you eat in your room, sometimes when you're done eating or you just want to set the dish somewhere, you just set it on the ground. And so I had rice and chicken and some sauce for dinner one night, and I set it on the ground. It's like half eaten. It's a couple days before I decide to clean up my dishes. When I do decide to clean up my dishes, I clean up everything else, and I finally get to this one dish, and I'm like, ooh, that's a bit of a that's a bit of a moldy dish. So I pick it up, I look at it, and I'm like, I cannot bring this downstairs. My parents will see this and be like, you are disgusting. They will disown me for this dish. So I set it back down, and I'm like, I'll take it next time. When they won't notice. Okay? So as it's just sitting there for a couple more days, I'm gaming, streaming everything. My room starts to get a bit smelly from it. And when you're sitting in a room that slowly builds up smell, you don't recognize that it's starting to smell. And I'm like, okay, I need to take care of this dish. People in my house, my parents, my siblings, everybody. I take the dish. And guess where I put it? Guess what I do with the dish? What would any sane person do at this point? Take it downstairs. Guess what I did? I put it in the closet, on the top shelf. I put this moldy rice and cheese and chicken, all of this, I put it on the top shelf, and I cover it with another dirty plate so that it won't smell as bad. The plate blocks off the smell. A day passes. I forget. More days pass. More days pass until it's like a month. This dirty dish has been sitting on the top shelf of my closet for a month at this point, or at least a couple of weeks. And of course, I don't notice the smell, even though it's terrible. So every now and then, my brother needs to tell me something, or literally any other circumstance where my brother would come into my room. And every now and then he'd come in and he'd walk in and be like, why does it smell like that? And I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about, it smells fine. Every time he does it, it happened like 3 times. I'm like, hey, get out of my room. Hey, can you get out of my room? So eventually he would get out of my room, and I'd be like, okay, I need to do something with this dish. And so another day he walks in and he's like, hey, why does it smell in here? And he starts looking around. And you wanna know what he does? Let me just demonstrate. You wanna know what he does? He opens the closet. Let me adjust the camera for a second. I was standing right here. And so I know that the dish is right here, and I don't want him to open this door. So I'm standing right here, I'm like, yes, brother, there's nothing in the closet. Really? You wouldn't mind me opening this door then, would you? No, it's all fine. Just don't. You don't need to open this one. You don't need to open this one. If he would have opened that, he would have seen 2 plates, or a plate and a bowl, and he would have picked it up, smelled it, and realized, okay, that is making the entire room smell like cheese. He somehow doesn't open the closet door and go, ugh. He doesn't throw up when he smells it. I don't even think that it changed the smell, because at this point, the entire room was filled with the smell. He exits my room. Everything is fine. Couple days pass. And so, up to this point, I don't really think anything of it all. I'm like, okay, at one point, I'm gonna be home alone one night and just be able to walk downstairs and get it. There have been multiple points during this entire time, by the way, I might tell you. Nobody was home and I just forgot. So then, finally, one night, I tell my friend Pyrone about this. You'll know him if you're a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, you should consider subscribing right now. To my YouTube, youtube.com/Cryptonic Live. So I tell my friend Pyrone about this, and he's like, dude, why don't you just do it right now? And I'm like, good idea, why don't I do it right now? So I walk into my hallway. I open the door. I walk into the hallway. I see my mother. Hey mom, I'm just getting some water. Yeah, I'm just getting some water. Luckily, I didn't have the plates in my hands at this point. I was just looking around, checking. So then I come back, I'm like, hey, my parents are home. So we wait like 10 minutes. And then I'm like, alright, dude, now's the time. I'm gonna go check to see if anybody is roaming about the house. So I grab my empty glass of water. Well, no, it's empty, so it would just be an empty glass. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be walking my entire path to where I'm going. And I will, if anybody asks, I'm just gonna say I was filling up my water. So I open the door, I walk out, coast is clear, can't see anybody. I walk downstairs as loudly as I can. Now you might be like,
why wouldn't you walk down quietly?
I walk down the stairs as loudly as I can for the single point of if anybody is awake or if anybody will hear me, I'll be able to say, hey, I'm just getting my water, and that'll distract them. That'll make them be like, okay, he's just getting water. So if they hear any sounds in the future, they'll be fine with it. And unfortunately, nobody heard the first time, or at least nobody came out and asked. So I'm walking down the stairs. I go down, I fill up my water, and I walk back up, and I'm like, Pyrone, the coast is clear. So I walk up, I go into my closet, I take it up, I pick up the dish, I take it out, and I sit with it for a second to show Pyrone. I take the top plate off, and instantly just a wave of a wave of rotten, over a month old rice, chicken, sauce. So I tell Pyrone, alright, I'm going now. Now's my time. And so I start walking. I go down the stairs as quietly as I can. And I think about it. I'm like, okay, if I put this dish in the sink, I do not think that it'll wash. I think it will genuinely just make everything else smell terrible. It'll make the kitchen smell terrible. It'll make it such a big problem, especially like when you're cleaning, stuff gets a little bit aerated. What are my other options? I can go into the kitchen and I can clean this plate out and take the blame in the morning. Or I can go outside and clear it off on the side of the house. I walk outside, I open the door as quietly as I can, and I'm walking out there. How am I gonna do this? And I walk to the side of the house where the trash can is. If I empty this into the trash can, what happens later? Well, rotten food in a trash can doesn't sound like the greatest combination if you don't want cockroaches all over your trash can. So the next best option is to clear it off on the ground, which is a pretty smart idea. You know, it decomposes, it gets eaten by animals, whatever. Let me ask you something, chat. Have I in this entire story mentioned grabbing a fork? or a spoon or a spatula, a sponge, anything that would let me scoop it out. No, I haven't. And that was a terrible mistake because that meant that I would have to grab the fork that was in the bowl. And it was submerged. I reach in with like the tiniest claw hands you can get, like trying to get the smallest grip on it. And then my hand slips off and into the whatever is in that dish at this point. You can't even call it food. I grab the fork and I just smell my hands for a second. It's worse than you can imagine, because now I've spread it. Whatever was on the outside was the best of it. Whatever's on the inside is the most rotten. So I'm like, okay, I gotta scoop this out as fast as I can. So I'm scooping it out. I'm on the ground, and I'm like, come on, you got it. My hand gets in the mixture more. It's like covered at this point. My palm has it on it. It's not just my fingers anymore. And I finally get the last scoop out, and I'm like, okay, I have everything, but this dish is not clean. How do I get it inside clean? Another fork in the road comes along, where if I want to, I could just put these in the trash. Nobody would ever know. 2 dishes missing, who's gonna ever notice if 1 or 2 goes missing? But then I'm like, well, I could do that, but is that the right thing to do? No, it's not the right thing to do. To throw away some dishes just because they're dirty. And I pick them up with my hands that are covered in the smell, and I walk back all the way to the front door, and I set them down so that I can open the door. But as I set them down, I hear some talking from the inside of my house. I'm speechless at this point. I'm just standing there with these dirty dishes on the ground next to me, just nothing to do. There's people inside. They're obviously awake. Whatever. So I wait a second. I'm like, maybe they'll just go inside, not check. But I set the dishes down. I walk all the way up to the front door. I'm making sure that I will block the view. If anybody comes outside, I will block it. Nobody was downstairs. Maybe the voice that I heard was just somebody talking very loudly in the room. I don't know. But I do know that at that moment, I was like, okay, I have like maximum a couple minutes to do this. And I walk from my foyer to the kitchen, and I set them in the sink. And I'm like, okay, I gotta clean these, obviously. Nobody else is gonna want to clean these. So I take the scrubber, and I grab a bunch of soap. Like, this is gonna need a ton of soap. I'm cleaning it, and I'm scrubbing it, and I'm like, this is month-old stuff that I'm cleaning. And, you know how when food gets to a certain age, it just hardens, even if it was pure liquid before. So I fill it with soap and water. I'm like, well, if somebody walks down here the next day, what are the chances that they walk into the kitchen, pick up the dish with water and soap in it, dump it out, and then smell it? Very, very low chance. And I tiptoe up the stairs, and I'm like, I'm out of the clear. I'm out of the clear. And so I walk up to my room, and I tell Pyrone, I'm like, man, I got it. And he's like, woo, yeah, good job, Nick. And so the point of this story is procrastinate. If you need to. I mean, in this case, I didn't need to procrastinate on taking a dish downstairs, but procrastinate if you need to. I mean, obviously not for a deadline, but like, if you just need some time to get something done, take your time. Take whatever time you need, because in the end, you can get it done. Even if you need to rush it, do it at like 9 a.m. just because you're tired, you can do it. It's fine. It'll be fine. You're good.